Hello, everybody. My name is Matthew Johns, and my presentation is Lupercalia to Valentine's Day, Roman Festival to Christian Holiday. In my presentation, I will be discussing how Lupercalia, a festival of pagan tradition of fertility, becomes Valentine's Day, our festival of love and marriage. So, Valentine's Day isn't our only current holiday that has roots back to the ancient world. Along with Valentine's Day, we see Christmas and the Olympics having roots in traditions from the ancient world. There's a festival called Saturnalia that is linked to Christmas, but is a Roman festival to honor Helios, the god of the sun. Saturnalia was celebrated to ask Helios to bring the sun back around the world for the new year. Otherwise, the world would be left in the dark and essentially be cast in the shadows. Our modern version of the Olympics celebrates athletes from around the world and promotes unity between nations. While the Greek Olympics did have many different nations and societies take part in the festival, it began as a way to honor the Greek pantheon of gods through sport. In this presentation, I will be discussing mainly Lupercalia to Valentine's Day. I will discuss what Lupercalia was and why it was the foundation for our understanding of Valentine's Day, and how it changed over the course of these centuries to become Valentine's Day. Before we talk about Lupercalia, we have to discuss Rome, as it's the birthplace of the festival. Rome was founded in 753 BCE. It has an origin myth that describes the two brothers Romulus and Remus and how they came to power. In the origin myth, Romulus and Remus are sons of Rhea Silvia and the god of war Mars, or as some people know him, Ares. Their uncle Amulius was afraid of being overthrown by his nephews and ordered for them to be drowned in the river Tiber. As the twins were sent adrift, they were saved and raised by a she-wolf. In Latin, the word lupa means she-wolf. This gives us a direct origin for the root of Lupercalia. After the she-wolf raised the boys, they were discovered by farmers and raised until they were visited by their father Mars. When they were visited by Mars, he told them that it was finally time to overthrow their uncle. After they overthrew their uncle, they would then create their own city on the banks of the Tiber where they were saved by the she-wolf. The two brothers fought for their right to name the city, and ended up one killed the other in the process. The surviving brother Romulus would then name the city after himself and found Rome. Rome went through many transformations throughout its existence, from religious changes to locational changes. But eventually, Rome was split into two empires, the East and the West, and the Western Empire declined in the period of 375 CE to 476 CE. Now that we have a brief overview of the history of Rome, we can finally discuss Lupercalia. The festival of Lupercalia is one of the oldest festivals recorded from Rome. Lupercalia is such an old festival that it comes from a time where not all Roman gods were believed to have names yet. For this reason, we don't have a 100% sure understanding of who Lupercalia was meant to celebrate in the Roman pantheon. It's written that we must also remember that the Lupercalia undoubtedly descends from the very earliest period of the Roman religion, when the individuality of deities was not clearly conceived yet, and their names are unknown, doubtful, or adjectival only. Through these records, we get a sense that Lupercalia was an important enough festival that it survived and was passed down from the founding of Rome. The festival would begin on February 13th every year and ended 2 days later on February 15th. So for 2 days, they would celebrate this with feasts and activities that praise Lupercal. Lupercalia was celebrated with animal sacrifices, two chosen youths wearing the sacrificial animal skin, and youths being smeared with blood and milk from the animals that were sacrificed. And as you can see in this painting here, we see two youths running around chasing individuals with strips of leather in their hand. This leather was used to whip individuals to essentially chase out their infertility. As the festival began and the whippings would start, individuals would run from a cave called the Lupercalia, which was believed to be the she-wolf's cave, into a city and a shrine designated to Lupercalia. The many aspects and meanings of Lupercalia and its events are still debated to this very day, but the common understanding is that the festival is around death, rebirth, and fertility. The death is being signified by the sacrificial animals, rebirth by the spreading of blood and milk on the chosen youth's face, as to give ways for the animals to live on in this festival. And fertility, which is the most commonly known reason for this celebration, is through the whipping of individuals with the animal skin. Some believe wearing animal skin became a symbol of Pan, the god of cattle, and used his likeness to ward off infertility in both men and women. The youths were imitating the lecherous Faunus, or Pan, god of cattle. The idea of covering the male genitals with goat skin and using the same to strike the opposite sex is intended to both eliminate feminine barrenness and awaken the powers of fertility. The festival is by date and meaning one of the closest predecessors to what we commonly celebrate as Valentine's Day. But the question becomes, how did this pagan holiday of sacrifice and whipping turn into the modern celebration of love? It was passed down through the church and was continually ushered on by the Roman emperor, and stated that Lupercalia lived on for centuries under his successors into the age of imperial Christianity. One of the major changes that I mentioned, the connection from Lupercalia to modern celebrations of Valentine's Day takes some divergence, but the continuation of the ancient world and its celebrations really depended on the Roman Catholic Church. And the Roman Catholic Church is where we get Saint Valentine. Saint Valentine is recognizable in imagery by iconography such as birds, roses, and children of epilepsy, as he is the patron saint of all those. There are many stories of many different Saint Valentines, but the story that holds the closest connection to both Lupercalia and Valentine's Day comes from Saint Valentine living under Emperor Claudius II's rule in the 3rd century. Emperor Claudius was a warmonger and used Rome's military prowess to wage bloody war during his reign. It's stated that draft dodging was an option to eligible males, and one could avoid the army by marrying as only single men were pressed into service. And in an effort to boost his ranks, Claudius temporarily outlawed marriage. This ban on marriage made it so that all eligible males would go into military service. While this ban on marriage causes a priest named Valentine to secretly start performing marriages on young lovers against the decree of the emperor. After he was discovered, Valentine was imprisoned and executed on coincidence the day devoted to the old Roman love lotteries, February 14th, in 269 CE. Valentine died a martyr, and 200 years later his death was considered a holy day by Pope Gelasius. The date was still celebrated as Lupercalia, but the church sought to cast the association of love in the Christian rather than the carnal mode. The focus of the celebration then became more to honor St. Valentine's original mission of spreading love in the world and marrying young lovers. Other changes were made to further separate the pagan ritual of Lupercalia from the new festival of Valentine's Day. While there is still disconnect between the celebrations and rituals of the two festivals, it is notable that both festivals share a common day as Valentine's Day phases out Lupercalia. This change turns a carnal pagan celebration into an acceptable holiday based around love for the Roman Empire as the Catholic Church took over. The festival changes from a time of lovemaking and licentiousness that cures sterility to a day that we use to remember love, much more in tune with the saint the day immortalizes and has more values closer to the ideals of the church. While Lupercalia was a festival surrounded around sacrifice, whipping, and pagan worship of gods, it still survived under the empire of the church for around 469 CE, roughly 200 years after the death of Saint Valentine. Even as Christianity overtook the world, the classical world still hosted and celebrated their festivals, and Lupercalia was one of them. Stating that the church wanted separation from the carnal holidays implies that there was an idea that Lupercalia did not change over the course of those 200 years. Through Christian adaptation, there is a separate version of Lupercalia that combines Valentine's rituals of exchanging notes of love, later to be called a Valentine. With the connection between men and women that originally was part of the Roman festival, it stated to abolish the lewd customs of boys drawing the names of girls from lots to honor the goddess Juno. Zealous Christian prelates substituted saints' names on these tickets. Lupercalia was a Roman festival that survived through the initial banning of pagan celebrations in CE 391. With the changing of times, Lupercalia evolved to meet restrictions closing tighter on the Roman world until the church finally chose to separate from the festival altogether, creating Valentine's Day in honor of the martyred Saint Valentine. Through this process, the world turned its back on Lupercalia. While the execution of Saint Valentine happened during Lupercalia, and the world used it to forget the ancient festival. It provides an excellent example of how Roman religion still affects our society and is celebrated today. The ability of Lupercalia to be passed down and transformed all the way until today really gives us an insight into how these memories were passed and changed to meet current religious standards. A festival from the time of paganism that uses animal sacrifice and whipping of semi-nude individuals to fight barrenness and of reproduction and promote fertility that gets altered and changed to become one of the most celebrated holidays of love to this very day. While Lupercalia's transformation into the worldwide celebration of Valentine's Day represents the ever-changing world the Roman religion faced, it also gives us an understanding of the way in which the world and other religions absorb culture and traditions of Roman religion. But why? Some hypothesize that it comes from an effort to slowly convert an entire religious group to Christianity, as over the years the changing traditions lead to Christian ideals. This absorption of culture and religion to transition others over the course of hundreds of years gave us our holidays to this very day. We can see connections in Valentine's Day and Saturnalia, but what do we make of this? Valentine's Day today is generally considered a Hallmark holiday and has less to do with love and more about spending money to buy things for each other. But the interesting thing to remember about all these things is the further that we move away from old Christian ideals of society, the further we're moving away from ancient civilizations. The less that we actually see of medieval concepts also means the less that we see of concepts and celebrations that predate the church. And as we move further and further away down from Christianity and religious ideals, we move away from the societies that they got their ideas from. Thank you all for listening to my presentation. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you.